Today we're talking Brightline and really the battle over Brightline, particularly as it goes down between Disney and Universal and how this is playing out in Orlando, and kind of giving a little bit of an update on where the Brightline is at as of now. As always, folks are really interested in this because this is a huge economic engine for South and Central Florida. This is going to be a massive mover of people between South and Central Florida, particularly Orlando, and also between Miami and the theme parks. And the effect on the theme parks is something that is going to be huge. This system is going to have use for people other than theme park viewers, but it does boil down to Universal and Disney and some of the conflicts between them, and particularly wrapping together with the litigation, because I think this project, particularly as it goes into phase 3, cannot be completed without the wrapping of litigation between the CFTOD and Disney. So in a way, some of these battles, right, that we're seeing right now with Disney in the state, Disney in the new district, these are things that are going to need to wrap before Brightline and other companies can move ahead. So you can see that one thing can have a domino effect of affecting so many other things in Florida. So as always, guys, I'm Andrew Esquire, an American attorney, specifically a Florida attorney practicing in special district law for about 10 years in Central Florida. Specifically Orlando, representing lots of these special districts around Central Florida, so Celebration, Bonnet Creek, Reunion, lots of those, as well as a lot of large corporations, land developers in Central Florida. So very familiar with land development issues. In fact, I actually signed an agreement with the successor of Brightline for one of my development clients. So we actually helped them on that rail corridor where Brightline can go 125 miles per hour, which is actually the top speed for Brightline. So I was part of that. A little small part of that, not a huge part, but a small part of that, that whole project and getting that approved, getting that moved forward. And yeah, it was really a little fun thing I worked on there in Central Florida. So I'm very familiar with this. I'm very familiar with the project. I do not and have not represented Brightline personally, so I can't say I've represented them. However, I know of the project. The project has been going on for a very long time now. So let's talk about this. Obviously, this is the high-speed rail between Miami and Orlando. The travel time right now is estimated at 2 hours and 59 minutes, so just under 3 hours for a non-stop ticket. It's going to be about 3 hours and 30 minutes for a ticket with stops. The cost, it looks like, for the economy class is going to be $79. There'll be obviously a more premium package as well as a family rate, which will be more. But as a business traveler, as a lawyer who is often traveling between Miami and Orlando, in fact, quite often, this is a welcome option. In fact, Brightline is already being used often by lawyers and paralegals, professionals that are moving between Miami and Fort Lauderdale or Palm Beach, because we want a place to sit down and have, nice accommodations, be able to work quietly, plug in our laptops. It's much more comfortable working in a train than working on a bus or even a plane. It's just not convenient. It's not the same thing, and you don't get as much done. It's actually quite inconvenient to go through all the hassles of flying versus taking a train, much easier. So Brightline does have that built-in, business use of people like me, lawyers, professionals who want to take those trips between Miami and Orlando and don't want to pay $100, $200, even maybe $300 for those flights. And by the way, those flights between Miami and Orlando are often packed. Many days, if I missed my flight, or let's say the flight was canceled, that was it. They were all fully booked. Those flights were fully booked between Miami and Orlando. So I just had to wait till the next day or try to get on another airline and pay an exorbitant rate. It was just actually ridiculous trying to go that small distance. So I think Brightline will actually tap in immediately to a very high demand ecosystem that already has folks going between Miami and Orlando. I think it will actually do very well just based on that. But beyond that, there's going to be those tourists, those people that are visiting maybe from Asia, South America, Europe, wherever else, that want to go between Miami and Orlando. They're visiting Florida and they want to go between the two top tourist destinations in the state of Florida, Miami and Orlando, South Florida and Central Florida. And so they've got a huge potential market. Now, they've had some slowdown, some legal trouble, some battles, but as of date, they are set to open on September 1st. You can already purchase tickets on September 1st from the Brightline website. Also, They may open even earlier if they're able to get approvals in August, or before August, rather. They may be potentially open even the last weeks of August, which would be pretty awesome to see that there in South and Central Florida. Look, I'm very excited about that. I'm excited to see that. So I'm looking forward to it, very much looking forward to seeing that completed. But there's been this battle in Central Florida as to how it's going to play out. And so phase one was the South Florida section of Brightline. So that was between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. Phase two was to Orlando. Phase three is supposed to be to Tampa. Now, there's a lot of things holding up phase three, and there's a lot of other channels that have done a great job on doing deep dives on phase three. That is the link to Tampa. Now, that one may or may not ever happen, right? So I'm just throwing that out there. It's pending a lot of funding approvals, whether it's federal and even state in some cases. So that is hanging out there. But what happens in Orlando may very well be something that we can see within a shorter period of time. So what are the competing ideas? And what were the competing routes in Orlando? And how does this boil down to Universal versus Disney? So originally, this was the route here in Orlando. So it was going to go and stop at Orlando International, and then it was going to stop at Disney Springs. Now, obviously, this would have been great for Disney, right? And it would have helped Disney out greatly because it would have dumped right into their property and would have added a stop that was really convenient for Disney. Now, of course, other theme parks, Universal, SeaWorld, other parks were against this, but that wasn't what stopped this. What stopped this was actually Disney's failure to be willing to contribute the land, or really to partner at all with Brightline, saying, yeah, you're going to have to fund this, come over here, you're going to have to do all this work yourself. So, of course, they canceled that. So there was a cancellation of the Brightline station at Disney Springs because of the unwillingness to collaborate on that with Disney. They did not want to shell out for that or really give up that land there on their property. So that one fell by the wayside. However, there's still a demand for an additional station besides the station at the airport. There's demand for one more Orlando stop, not just an airport stop. Now, an airport stop is great. And in fact, I think the airport stop, regardless, even if there's no other stop, the airport stop will be fine because the airport has an intermodal center there that connects with, that can connect with light rail, other forms of transportation, buses. It's well linked up with highways. So I think it's going to be fine, even if it just ends up stopping at the airport and that's where it's at. I think it will still be very, very useful. People can go the last mile or two in a car or other vehicle as they want to get to their destination, whatever park that is, whether that's Disney or Universal. I think it will still be very easy to get there from that. However, the battle between Universal and Disney comes down to the northern and southern routes. So this was the previous route that people were thinking about for Brightline. They were thinking it was going to stop at the Orlando airport and then go this southern route by the 417, which is an expressway, very undeveloped still, very much open to development. So it's going to go along that corridor and stop at what's called a South I Drive station, and here it's marked as SID. Now, why is it SID? Well, because once again, Disney Springs is out. So what they were thinking was, we'll put this on the other side of I Drive, so opposite from Disney. It would still be very close. It would still be easy to get there. There will obviously be buses, shuttles, taxis, whatever else to get you that final half a mile over to Disney World, but it would not be on Disney property. It would not be on Reedy Creek property either. That's a fair point, which we'll bring up later. However, this previous plan was kind of shunned by the other stakeholders in Orlando, businesses and the convention center, and of course, Universal. What Universal would prefer is a Orlando Convention Center, or Orange County Convention Center, as the OCCC Station. And they would prefer that this linked up with Brightline goes to an OCC station and then down to the South I Drive station, if that station is built at all, right? But what they're envisioning is a shared rail corridor between Sunrail, which is the existing rail system in Central Florida, and Brightline. So actually a piece of the system that it can be used by both. Now, there already are stations where these logos are stationed down here, station over here, and station over here. So what they would have to share is this proposed Sunshine Corridor, this red corridor. This would be shared by Brightline and Sunrail. Now, they still have to figure out who would ultimately own that. Sunrail feels like they should own that. They want to own that as part of their system. Of course, Brightline would be footing the bill for a good piece of that, a good chunk of that. So that would be a point of contention there. And also, without that spur, Brightline can't operate, so that obviously would be something that Brightline wants to work really closely on the ownership of. I would say they should have some sort of shared ownership with each having like an ownership stake in that. But they can work that out between the two of them. Now, of course, this area, I will say this proposed path will go along I-4 and will be a logistical nightmare. It would be much, much harder than taking the southern route, simply because the southern route, if you see that original alignment with the dashed lines, was much easier to build because it's undeveloped or relatively undeveloped compared to the red line, which is going through heavily developed Orlando, would have to be above grade and would have to maneuver around I-4, maneuver around a lot of the existing developments. It would kind of be a nightmare and cost a lot of money. Now, Universal would prefer this, right? Because an extra station would be helpful for them. But my take is here on this battle between Universal and Disney is, honestly, that Orange County Convention Center station is not needed for Brightline as much as it would be for Sunrail. So even if it went this southern route, even if Brightline goes this southern route, because Universal is building a convention center station for Sunrail, as long as the Sunrail can connect there, there will be an easy rail connection to get to Universal. So I don't think you need Brightline to stop at that OCCC many C's in there, right? I don't think you need Brightline to stop at this station. In fact, that might slow down the express function of Brightline, right? I think it'd be fine if they just had one Orlando station. If they just stopped at the airport and they just kept going till Tampa, I frankly wouldn't see a problem with that. I think that would be perfectly fine if that's what they had to go with. I think what's really the thing is having this station for Sunrail, which will make the connection very easy. They can jump over at a transfer station, bing, bam, boom. They've already got that set up at the airport, the transfer capacity. You're done and you're set up. Mind you, this station will be funded by a community development district. Actually, one of my ideas back in the day, this was actually something that I thought up, and I said, let's form a CDD for this. I drafted up the documents, the plan, I pitched it to Universal. So I'm glad they ultimately ended up thinking that plan was a good plan. So that being said, I think Universal will be fine in this fight in whichever way it comes out. Even if they don't get the North Alignment, I think they'd be fine having Sunrail. Now, I did get a video forwarded to me by another channel. This channel was Mickey Views, and he had a very interesting proposition, which I actually thought was a cool idea that I wanted to mention and bring up, sort of like an honorable mention here. Now, it's not going to work. I'm going to tell you why, but it was a fun idea. So his idea was to build a Reedy Creek station right next to ESPN Wild World of Sports in the land owned by the CFTOD, owned by the new district. And this would be, in a normal situation, building a Reedy Creek station that's owned by the CFTOD, or rather overseen at least by the CFTOD. That would be a really cool idea. And it's within the CFTOD's power. They could certainly do that. They could certainly levy bond funds for that. That certainly would be a good use of their powers. Here's the problem, and here's why a Reedy Creek station would not work. Because of the litigation right now. So the problem is with a Reedy Creek station, a station that is on Reedy Creek property, not on Disney property, on Reedy Creek property. The problem is that the current litigation is over the development credits. This land that is owned by Reedy Creek is also, it's currently conservation land. And if you're going to use conservation land, you need to use up those development credits, because that conservation land is typically preserved to give you development credits. So you need to be very careful when you're using and developing conservation land. As well as that line would be theoretically running through more conservation land as it goes south, more Reedy Creek conservation land as it goes south. So you need to be very, very careful about that alignment and about that use of land. And because the state case is all about whether or not those developer agreements are still valid, those restrictive covenants and developer agreements, which gave all of the powers to Disney, all of the credits to Disney to use, which are going to get invalidated under Florida law because they're illegal agreements under Florida law for multiple reasons. Not just because they weren't properly noticed, not just because not everybody, got the mailer, they didn't go out in the newspapers correctly, weren't put in the actual agenda correctly. Not only that, but just they're unenforceable under Florida law generally. But that being said, the state case has to resolve. That could take 6 months or a year. And I actually anticipate that Disney will stall on that case as much as they can. So Disney may actually end up killing this potentially good proposal, which I think could be a fantastic proposal and a way to kind of split the baby, so to say, with a Reedy Creek station. So that's my take there on that proposal. Fun proposal though, and I always like entertaining ideas there. In this battle against Brightline, I think the ultimate winners will be the people of Orlando and South Florida in moving between the two. We're just going to need to see how it ultimately shakes out with the details here. Obviously, being willing to work with business, being able to work with the state is quintessential here. So I really do hope that Disney gets back to, in short order, gets back to wanting to work with the state of Florida rather than against them. And I do hope that Universal as well learns to play a little bit nice and say, okay, we're willing to make a compromise here. We'll take the Sunrail station. We don't need a Brightline stop. Sunrail's good enough. And we can have an Orlando that's networked, that's futuristic, that's clean, and that everybody is profiting and being able to enjoy what they want to enjoy in a fast and efficient manner. That's my hope. We'll see whether that comes to fruition. Guys, I know 50% of you are not subscribed. So if you could subscribe today, I hope I have earned your subscription. I hope you like this video. Make sure you leave a like. If you also have any ideas about Brightline, thoughts about Brightline, comment on this below, and I will talk to you later.